Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going above and beyond the call of box office return to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Nicole Finari. With me today is
Jen Brown.
And what movie we're going to overanalyze this week?
Widows.
Directed by Steve McQueen, Widows is the story of four women with nothing in common except a debt left behind by their dead husband's criminal activities. Set in contemporary Chicago amid a time of turmoil, tensions build when Veronica, played by Viola Davis, Alice, played by Elizabeth Debicki, Linda, played by Michelle Rodriguez, and Belle, played by Cynthia Erivo, take their fate into their own hands and conspire to forge a future on their own terms. What did you think?
I loved it.
Yeah?
I really enjoyed it. Yeah. It was very tense and stressful as a movie watching experience, but I really liked it.
Can we get the one best actor in this whole movie? Can we get this out of the way?
Without a doubt. I mean,
definitely.
We say it at 1, 2, 3. Viola Davis.
Wait, no, Olivia the dog.
Oh.
Can we just set aside
Olivia
all of that? That dog was cute as
was wonderful. I was like, if they kill this dog on screen, I'm not gonna be.
Yeah. That dog is having her year, and I was like, there should really be a best Oscar for non-human.
And the dog was in something else. I don't remember what.
Game night. Yeah. Okay, so Viola Davis.
Viola Davis is amazing. And she was so good in this. I mean, she's good in everything, but I am really hoping that she gets an Oscar nod for this one, because I think she deserves it.
Yes.
I'm a little concerned because I did look. I didn't read any analysis, but I saw that it hasn't done great as well as they were hoping at the box office.
But I'm hoping it has staying power.
I hope so too.
It has had a lot of really good reviews.
Yeah.
Love Viola Davis. Cynthia Erivo, critically underused, but this was a very long, packed movie, so...
Yeah, no, and I think the parts where she was in there, she shined, and I really liked her. And I definitely, when she was on screen, I feel like she totally, stole the show. So I loved her.
Did you see Bad Times at all?
No.
Good, don't. It's not very good. But she was, amazing, A, and B, I was like, this was her first film role? How is that even possible?
Yeah.
She is so good.
And she's British, right?
Yeah, she is. And she's, theater star.
Yeah.
Which is, it's not like she had no acting experience.
Right.
But still, film acting and stage acting is not the same thing.
Right. No, exactly. And I saw something saying, she's going to be playing, Harriet Tubman in a movie soon. And so that actually was, a little bit controversial because she's British. And so there were some people who were not thrilled with that, but...
I have a long-standing issue with that.
I loved her performance, and I am
But you couldn't find one freaking person in America to play for...
Right.
They gave Martin Luther King away. They gave Lincoln away. Right. Dick Cheney, on the other hand, I don't care.
Right, and I mean, and also it's sort of related to, Steve McQueen. There were sort of similar things with 12 Years a Slave, where it was sort of, who do these stories belong to? And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Not to get us off on a tangent.
No, yeah. The crush I have on Daniel Kaluuya is just getting...
I was about to say.
A little bit out of...
He was great as well.
I just have this thing where when he's on screen, I can't look at anybody else.
Yeah.
He pulls my eyes to him.
Yeah.
Always. And the look of when he steals their van.
Yeah,
and the little look of glee on his face was just so good.
And that little weird evil twitch he had was similar to the twitch he did in Get Out, but in this case, instead of the nervousness it was a sort of it was very interesting.
Yeah,
I like him a lot as well. I mean, I couldn't take my eyes off him because I was scared of him, but
he's so magnetic to me. It's he pulls focus from every other
good.
actor. And I don't want to say that as I think he's an ungenerous actor.
Right.
Because I don't think that. It's just he just is so magnetic to me. And while we're talking about the men, the guy who played his brother, I'm looking at him.
Oh yeah, and I didn't recognize that actor, but I thought I enjoyed him.
Yeah, he was just in White Boy Rick.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah. So he, again, like, his one scene, I mean, basically, he had, like, two.
No, he had some big scenes.
But
the scene with him and Viola Davis in the apartment. So there's a scene where, and I don't know, how much of the movie...
Go for it.
Okay,
Explain
so
away.
there's a scene where she's widowed, and she's sort of held responsible for her husband's actions as a thief, and in terms of the guy that they were trying to rob. And so he comes and he threatens her. And I just thought that scene between the two of them was really fantastic. He was the one who I thought might kill the dog.
Yes. He did menacing.
He did menacing very well.
And I would say menacing actually isn't easy. A lot of time actors overdo it.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He just hit that right note. And so, again, in this movie, and there's a side plot I want to get into in a minute, I could have seen a lot more of him, actually. Like, I could have had more screen time from him. But it's hard. It's hard. Like, the movie was already long, and I'm like, I didn't see enough Cynthia Erivo. I didn't see enough that guy. Like, but...
And one thing I found interesting about his character was, like, when they first showed him, it's like he's sort of the upstart who's running for, like, what office is it?
Alderman in Chicago.
Alderman. And so you have this sense, because the first scene you see him in, they're in this church this sort of old church where it's like his headquarters. And you have Colin Farrell's character, who's clearly like the seasoned politician. And I definitely had a certain image of him in my mind as like, that's the guy I'm rooting for in terms of like running for office. And then you have the scene with the brother and you realize like, oh yeah, the brother is, he's on to some different things here. He's, a gangster. And so I still was had convinced myself somehow that like, he didn't know what his brother was doing possibly. And so that scene with Viola Davis just was like, it put it into full focus that no, both of these politicians are
crooks.
Yeah. They're both sleazeballs.
They're both, yeah.
But I just thought it was very interesting, like how those two characters played out.
I agree. And there's so much to unpack from the social issue side of this movie. And so, like, there are a million different roads we can go. I do want to talk through some of the cinematic stuff, though. So, question, because I didn't know what to make of this. So, one thing that was really noticeable in the movie was the costume design.
Mm-hmm. Like all the black and white outfits.
She never wears a color.
Yeah, I was like, am I watching Scandal? What is this? Yeah.
Except one scene. The scene where she goes to the other woman's house and realizes that her husband's having an affair. She's wearing a red...
Well, not even just he's having an affair, that he's... Well, what do you think there? This is a big spoiler, people. Yes. Sorry about that.
I don't think she realized he was, like, there. I think it was a surprise when he showed up alive.
Yeah.
By the way, he's still alive. We just ruined the movie for you.
And so, sorry about that, folks. Spoiler alert. But so there's a scene, she goes to this woman's house, and then the dog gets away from her and starts, like, yipping at this door. And so to me, I thought that it was just like his coat was there. Too. And so it's like, the dog smelled the coat. And like, they, so it's like, oh yeah, my husband's having an affair. I did not realize. Yeah, that it was like, he is actually back there. And I still am not clear on which one she realized. Like, did she realize? She didn't realize he was alive. She thought it was just a coat.
Yeah. I think she thought the same thing as the audience. But I did notice, I'm like, he has her wear a red shirt, a colored shirt for the only scene in the movie. And I'm like, what are you trying to tell me? Like, red flag? Like, I was like, this means something, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I didn't even...
I wasn't sure.
I definitely picked up on all the black and white outfits, but did not even register. I think because I was so freaked out at seeing that big shocker.
And then the other scene that, like, a lot of critics talked about was the scene in the car.
Oh, with Colin Farrell and his assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I wrote a note about it. I called it, What a Difference a Block Makes.
Yeah. So they're kind of rolling through Chicago. And kind of one of the issues of the movie is that Colin Farrell is representing a district in the south side of Chicago, and it's, almost completely black, and he's white. And they redistricted kind of around him, and they kept him in that, I don't know, ward, whatever you want to call it. But they lost like 7,000 houses. And so it's like you just see them. They're having this conversation in the car, and you can't see them. You just see the outside of the car, and you see them like roll through the neighborhood and just like watch the wealth change, which is really well done. I thought, like, for a long movie, again, it was trying to do a lot. It was very ambitious, but I thought it was pretty tightly edited.
Absolutely. And he made a lot of use out of, like, those, like, really, like, those shots like that. Like, 'cause, like, I remember watching that scene and thinking, well, you know, why don't we see them? You know, what is, and then sort of watching as the scenery changes and realizing what he was doing there. And I feel like there were a lot of just, like, cuts like that and, like, shots like that, like, a lot of close-ups. That really added to the storytelling.
Right. And
like,
yeah, I agree.
I loved the opening sequence. Like, I loved it. Like, the way that it sort of cut back and forth between the heist. So it opens with them being widowed. And so, like, the cuts between, like, the heist back to each widow, I thought that was just really creative and, like, really, like, different way of giving a backstory.
Yeah, I thought I had, like, the minute I got home, you know, there's always that, like, list of things that you look up. How tall is Elizabeth Debicki?
Oh, yeah.
Because
she seems like she's tall.
She towers. She's 6'2" and a half. Wow. I was like, she's over 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, you have height issues when you're quoting it in, like, half inches.
Yeah. No, and I'd never seen that actress before.
Yeah, and I
liked her.
I liked her, and I thought
everyone was good.
They just, and I thought they, like, very starkly make use of her height.
Absolutely.
In a lot of, like, her relationship with Lucas Haas.
I know, oh gosh.
Lucas Haas all grown up. As her sort of John, as it were, sugar daddy, and just a lot of the juxtaposition of how she's, like, so skinny. Mm-hmm. So she's sort of frail looking, but she just towers over everybody. And I thought...
But she's still so vulnerable.
Yeah, like, I thought he really, like, made good use of, like, establishing a lot of long shots where she's just, like, so tall.
I didn't really... I mean, I noticed she was tall, but Yeah.
Well, I think also, like, the rest of them are kind of short, too.
Yeah,
and, yeah, I mean, so her story arc and... well, okay. Speaking of the story arc, like, what did you think of the ending?
So I liked the ending. Sorry, another spoiler alert, folks. I liked the ending. I was I was so invested in all of them, and I really wanted them to succeed, and I needed that to happen.
Yes.
And so I was just relieved. I would say more than anything else. It was like there was so much tension, and it felt like finally, like, not a release per se. But I at least was like, that, you know, they made it through. They did this. Right. And I'm like, thank goodness they did this. Because,
So they make it through. And then, of course, the women agree never to see each other again. And then Alice and Veronica, Viola Davis and Elizabeth Debicki, like, run into each other by happenstance. So I was talking about this with a friend. And Veronica's like, hey, how have you been? And, you know, she's like, I've been good. And they kind of part ways. And it's the only time in the movie that you ever see Viola Davis smile. Either. She's just so serious.
She's had a rough go of it.
She really has. And
it's her lightness.
Yeah. And it was just like, we're okay. And it's good to see you. But my friend took it as she wanted more out of that interaction. And I was like,
I didn't get that sense. I mean,
I didn't either.
So it was really the scene in the restaurant itself. So they see each other and they don't, you know, they're at different tables because they didn't plan it. And I enjoyed just sort of that lingering, that knowing glance between the two of them while they're both there. I also liked seeing her, because I also read that ending as the guy that she was meeting was like the shakedown guy, and she was paying him like the money that she was, I thought the money she was giving him was returning the funds.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like she'd close. So I actually would have been, and then there was that interesting shot of the two of them in the
mirrors. Yeah.
And I actually would have been okay with it just ending there.
Yeah.
so I was sort of just indifferent, it was fine. Like, oh, I told my sister, because she saw it over the weekend as well, I said, I was hoping that means we could somehow get, like, I feel like we need like an HBO miniseries, or we need more.
Well, this was based on an English miniseries that ran, I guess, in the early 80s, and Steve McQueen said he's been waiting his whole life to remake it.
Well,
So, yeah,
he didn't hold back.
Yeah.
And
And I liked the smile. Like, you see her, like, we're good.
I didn't mind the two. It didn't strike me as false or off for the two of them to have that moment. They had that tender moment where, they hugged earlier in the film. So it struck me as genuine. I didn't need it, but it was fine. Yeah.
And I thought, they are sort of the two characters you get most invested in.
Yeah.
Definitely because they're the ones who
they have the most screen time.
Right. And their arc is the strongest. They're the ones who are the most dependent on the men in their lives before they lose them. And they have to grow into the, the independent women that they become.
Mm-hmm. And I think they're more
very
defined
different ways.
I think they're just, the characters are more defined than the Michelle Rodriguez character and I keep forgetting the British actress.
Cynthia Erivo.
Yeah. Who gets the least amount, as we've already discussed. Yeah. And then, I wanted more.
I did too, and I just, and there were so many great, character moments where, it's Gina Rodriguez who's clearly, she's the most vulnerable.
Yeah. And, so one scene I'll say that rung false or just was weird to me was the scene where she's trying to get the blueprints for the place they're going to rob, and she goes to that guy's house, who turns out to be the widower of the architect, right? And there's a scene where they kiss on the couch.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a little bit out of place. I didn't really, I expected there was going to be something more to that moment, or I just didn't know what it was for.
Men are sleaze.
Yeah,
that was a very overwhelming theme of this movie.
Was that sleaze, or was it he was just also, because it wasn't he tried to take it any further. It was just was he just also in a was it this weird moment of we've both been through the recent trauma of losing our spouses, and we shared this awkward, just sort of emotionally charged kiss, not even a romantic kiss, but just a. You know what I mean? But what I didn't know what to do with that moment, or why it was even in there, because I don't think it really added anything.
Okay, I took it as, and there are a few moments, another one that I really liked, small moment where Alice goes to buy the van from a police auction, and this guy is giving her advice, and then she wins the van, and he's like, "Great, where are we going to celebrate?"
Yes, that could have been a whole little short film at auction. It was wonderful,
and I'm like, "Yep, typical guy." It's he wasn't just being a genuinely nice person.
But did he say it in I don't know. I didn't even.
It wasn't sleazy per se.
I didn't even necessarily,
But there were a lot, that moment, the kiss moment where the guy's he's not sleazy per se. It's just that he's a man and he's feeling a strong emotion. And so the only way he knows how to react to that is, sexually. He can't actually just connect to a woman on a deeply personal level. He doesn't know how.
Right.
So he's going to kiss her. So I actually thought that was of a piece. There's just, this movie was hard on men.
I don't agree. Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with those two sides. I would say more so in the case of so in the auction scene, I can see it a bit more, because I feel in general, her sort of just the way that she was always seen was as a sort of, what can you offer me sexually? Even in terms of how her mom, basically tried to pimp her out, you know? And so I can definitely see how it's sort of just men, I think the idea was men look at her and all they see is a sexual object, and they don't see anything more to it. She even talks about that with not her John, but whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
Where she mentions everything is so transactional with you. So I can certainly see that as a theme with that character and how people relate to her. I just think that the Michelle Rodriguez scene was just, it was just more ambiguous, and to me it just wasn't clear what was going on there.
Okay. Yeah, I just, like I said,
I didn't like it.
Yeah,
because it didn't
So, hold that thought for 1 second. I just took it as, like, the movie's really hard on men.
Yeah.
It really shows, like, all terrible sides of men.
Yeah, I mean, they're all terrible.
Yes.
Pretty much. I mean...
So the thing that bothered me that I was like, this doesn't belong in this movie. Like, there was enough here. You didn't need to add this separate thing, was the subplot about the son getting killed by the Chicago police.
See, no.
How did you... Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You're second person to disagree with me. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I feel like, one of the things I like... So whenever I see these news, I always just get on my phone and I open a note and I just type in. So I just had a whole thing that was like Chicago. And so I think having that shooting in there, especially in Chicago, to me was just part of like contextualizing what was going on. You know, you had like the Mulligans who kind of, I think, were meant to be like the dailies, of Chicago. And, you have just so much... So the
son is just going to inherit
the
father's position, the political dynasty. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Over like a black city. And then you have like, the significance of like gun violence in Chicago. There's the scene where she says, how am I going to get a gun? This is America. And so I thought it, rather than, you always have, it's sort of a cliched subplot, right? Where you have like the husband and wife who grow apart after the death of a child. And, it's like, oh, the child like drowned at the pool. Why aren't you watching them? And I liked that, I felt like this fit more in with sort of the other themes being explored in the movie. Okay. It was tough because their whole backstory, all the backstories are just being told in these little glimpses. See, and that's... So you get so little. You don't know anything about the son.
But you get enough. And so that was a little bit what bothered me, because they show you first his gravestone. When they go to bury her husband, you see another gravestone, and you can do the math. So they have a... Right. So, and then there's this scene where they're arguing about him, and she says, well, of course, he wouldn't have been killed if he weren't my son. Yeah. Or she was like, something like, go have a kid with another woman. Like, she very, and it's like, that's all I needed to know. It's part of his betrayal. Yeah, no, but I'm like, that's all I needed to know was that he was involved in some kind of gun violence for being black, probably shot by the cops. Like, I didn't need the whole scene of watching it happen. Yeah. In a long movie, I was like, I just don't need this. Like, he actually did a good enough job of like planting it. Right. That I didn't feel like I needed a scene. And again, so then... But you're the second person who was like, no, I thought it was appropriate, so fine.
I thought it was a really powerful scene. And it was also just, the devastation of you're on the phone with your child. And that is, him reaching for the phone is what, And like I said, what I found impressive about it was just how it was told in these little snippets. And yet it was still... it gave me such a strong sense of, sort of what she'd been through and who she was, just for how little of time was spent on it. Yep. There was a lot going on in this movie. Yes. And not a lot of time, really, for any of the...
Yeah, and so that's kind of... That was the thing that I wanted them to spend more time on, which they didn't. So let's talk Chicago politics. So for all of you out there who may not know this, the Windy City... is not called the Windy City because of the weather. It refers to the corrupt politicians of Chicago talking so much they create wind. So if you didn't know that, now you do. You'll be ready for your next trivia night. So this movie was very much about Chicago politics. But to that end, I really wish we'd gotten more backstory on Malcolm Jennings. Why he decides to run, who he was, how he came to be like, I can be an alderman now, because it's clear he's a criminal.
Right, exactly. And that just
seemed like a weird, career move.
I was still hopeful.
And I was like, why is this a thing? So I was like, I could have had a little bit more time on that.
I think the character was really interesting, and I would have happily,
So please make the miniseries.
Yeah, we need it. Jane. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say that was one thing that was unclear to me, was why was he running? I think you saw a little bit of like, perhaps he wanted some of the power that like that family had. It's a different type of power than like the power he had, but it was still, it wasn't really clear. Yeah.
And I think like one of the big messages of the movie, which I absolutely loved, is that you're given this juxtaposition of this like daily-like family where power and nepotism, and they're on the grift, they're on the take. They use that power to line their own pockets. And then you have, you know, the criminal element, which is the black people in the movie, not the white people in the movie.
Well, he's also a criminal, just of a different kind.
No, yeah, I'm saying criminal for lack of like, we don't know. We don't know what kind of crime. I don't know if he was running drugs. Like what? I don't have another word for what his job was.
Right.
So I'm gonna go with that. But I think that's exactly the point. It's that like when black people do it, they're criminals and they're thugs and they're disgusting. And when white people do it, they are revered. Like they get away with it in different ways. Like the movie is very much about who gets to be the boss, like who gets to have the power and wield the power, and what do they do when they have it,
and like who is like dirtied by all of this,
right?
Like, one thing I found very interesting was the way they play with those roles, like in the sense of like them being an interracial couple, and you have she is seemingly oblivious to all of what her husband is doing, or maybe not totally oblivious, but maybe she's more of like a Carmela Soprano type character where she's in denial about it. But she's certainly kept far away. He certainly keeps these two things very separate.
Right.
And I just thought that was sort of an interesting turn, is that you have, so it wasn't just necessarily that, the black people were coded as the criminal, because, her husband...
No. Yeah, no, I don't think the black people are coded as criminals. What I'm saying is they're trying, like, he's very much trying to make the message of you can be a criminal, you can be a con man, you can be a grifter, and you can be violent. But if you do it this way, and you're white, it's socially acceptable.
Absolutely.
And if you do it a different way and you're black, it's not. Like, that is,
And then, I think that's part of why he was running as well.
It was like, I want in on this hustle.
Right, exactly. It's just a different type of hustle.
Exactly. But you said something that I hadn't thought of, and now I'm thinking of it, which is like the third way. Again, this is like... It's funny that it was directed by a man, because it's the most man-hating movie in the world. Like, it has a very powerful feminist message. So when the women have the power and the women get the money, right? Cynthia Erivo bails out her friend, Michelle Rodriguez, right? Sorry.
Michelle Rodriguez, yeah. She gets her shop back.
She gets her shop, which is like clearly a quinceañera shop.
Right.
That was hilarious, and I just was totally into it. To support her family, right?
Right.
And Veronica is like donating it to schools.
Right. So that's the scene I'm still trying. So the guy that she was paying off, wasn't that the guy who came to shake down the woman at the hairdresser at the beginning? Because that's who I thought it was. I thought that she was, that's what I still was sort of confused.
Okay.
And I was trying not to like read too much, but that's the thing I want to go and Google right away. Because that's
I don't know. I don't think it was the same guy. Because I was like,
is that her paying, is that
No,
her,
I think she kept it. Like, he goes down.
Yeah.
Why would she even bother giving him the money at that point?
Well, but I thought that the person who went down was, Daniel
Kaluuya dies.
Yeah, dies. But did he get busted? I thought that just he lost.
But he lost the election. He lost the election. He doesn't really need the $2 million for his campaign anymore.
I don't think he cared about that. I think he wanted his money. Because they robbed him.
They did.
And so I thought that it was pretty clear, like, the only reason you're still alive is because you need to pay me back my money. Yeah,
I took it as her like, I'm not clearing this debt. I'm donating it to a good cause.
Yeah, I don't know.
So, so the women use their power to support each other and to or to better themselves, like in Alice's case. And the men use their power to, like, line their own pockets and do, you know, unscrupulous things that include violence and or cheating on your wife.
Right. But then we have these other women characters, like the mom is a piece of work. Like the one who, you know, the tall.
Yes. Alice's mother.
Yes. And also she's the mom from, what was that movie with the Australian? Yeah. But also there was this movie a few years ago with these Australian gangsters. They made a TV show out of it. But she plays the mom of the gangsters, and she is no joke. Yeah. And this very much reminded me of her in that role. Okay. Jackie Weaver, that's her name. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and it was a similar sort of thing here. Like when she slapped her, there was actually in the theater I saw it in, there were like gasps. Then when Alice like slaps Viola Davis back was so good. And then people clapped for that. I think because they were still so horrified at the way her mom had just slapped her, you know, and slapped her in a way that was like, yeah, you're going to go out here and sleep with dudes so that we can, so you know, to support me.
I'm glad you said that because my audience all applauded when she shot Liam Neeson.
Yeah, they applauded for that too. No, my audience was very
into it.
And I enjoy it. That's why I just don't understand why is this movie doing better? Like
that's why I think it will though. It'll gain traction as like word of mouth and stuff because like I can't think of the last time I saw a movie and the audience was like,
oh yeah, they
probably Get Out, where like people were like in it.
Yes,
and it's
absolutely.
You're having the same experience, just kind of confirms it.
Yeah, no, and there was one scene during the heist, I'm not going to give away, where someone in the audience said, "Oh," you know, like it was that type of movie. We were all feeling it.
I was feeling it.
And back to the women characters. Yep. So 2 women characters who aren't very well defined: Colin Farrell's assistant and Robert Duvall's assistant.
Oh,
nurse.
Like nurse? Yeah, home care nurse or whatever.
What was up with that?
I love how, because at first you're not sure if Colin Farrell's like married to this woman.
Right.
Or not, but like.
Or it's just like.
Literally the entire movie, they do it like she's like 3 steps behind him the whole movie. And I was like, that was really well played. He's always walking ahead of her. They're never even side by side. Like, again,
And was that a parallel, like, in terms of, like,
absolutely,
the Robert Duvall?
like,
exactly,
again, like, absolutely.
It just continues, you know? And they have you really don't, they're just always there. You don't know really, like, how did she end up in this position? Like, what is, you know, she's obviously smart, you know?
Right. And tough as well. Like, she kind of chews him out in a scene, and she's like, hey, get your act together. Like, my freaking star is hitched to your bandwagon, so you better go ahead and win this dang election. I just
there's just so much going on.
There is so much going on.
The other thing I was going to mention related to that was the role of the church in all of this. So
please, let's go down that road.
So I think that was also very much both a Chicago thing and just a politics thing in general. So the church, you know, both in Chicago politics, but also in politics in general, plays a big role, especially the Black church. And so watching just the way that this minister so clearly knew that and was so clearly like just in on the game, you know what I mean? In terms of not necessarily like the criminal activity, but definitely so you're going to donate some extra to the church. You're going to, you know, in order for, you know, he definitely understood his power in, you know, playing kingmaker. And I just thought that was really interesting how he played the 2 of them against each other.
I did too, and it was interesting because I saw this movie right after Thanksgiving, and I was talking during Thanksgiving that like that side of the family for me is like traditionally very Catholic, and they were talking about this, you know, one group of people who has gotten very into like a mega church thing. And I was like, oh, I think those are all the grift. They're all con men. Like, they're all like for a religion, the people who had those mega churches have private jets and
Mm-hmm.
like they're just I just think it's a con.
Absolutely.
And so then we go to this movie and it's like, you know, you see all the people in the audience and it's clear that it's kind of got this like charismatic thing, and I was con. I mean, I not just talking about what a freaking con this is? Like,
yeah. And I think like what made it especially subversive is just like in the Black community, the role of the church, you know, during the civil rights movement, during just in terms of like organizing, even today, certainly weekend is just such a big thing because, you know, the church was one of the few independent institutions that Black people had. And so, you know, Reverend Martin Luther, you know, you had a lot of organizing, you know, you have a tradition of organizing coming out of community organizing coming out of the church. So it was also seeing him sort of taking that role and playing it in that way, like twisting it in that way that was kind of disturbing, you know? It's like, yeah, you know, he knows how much power he has, but he's not using it to demand better things for the community. You know what I mean? He's just it's a kiss the ring type of thing.
Absolutely.
And I think that was just more of the rot, you know, in terms of the politics in the movie.
Yeah. So yeah, now that you're saying it, coming back to sort of the son and the police, like, I see your point. I didn't think of, like, how the church fit into that big picture, but you're right. Like, it's really tearing down a lot of institutions. Like,
absolutely.
It's really trying to show the
very
corruption.
much of the moment.
So to that end, I changed my mind in my original opinion. You've talked me around. That, like, the rot at the core of the police, the rot at the core of the church, the rot at the core of the politicians. I think you're right. And the rot at the core of a lot of their marriages. Like, you've got physically abusive, you've got adulterous, you've got, what's the word? Like, the one husband is spending all their money at the track. You've got every version of terrible husband you can have.
And also that, like, offensive, like, small business program where they're totally just screwing over the women who are, you know, supposed to be getting businesses out of this program. You know, Michelle Rodriguez obviously not getting anything from this program. That hair, you know, the hair salon. And it's like, but he's totally using them for photo ops. And it was just, all, you know, it definitely painted a very bleak picture of, you know, these institutions are supposed to be lifting people up and they are doing nothing of the sort. I mean, these women had to freaking stage a heist, you know what I mean?
Right. To circle back then to your point, like, so that you as the audience member gets to the point where you were totally rooting for these women to pull off this heist and kill whoever gets in their way.
Absolutely.
Like, you're 100% like, let's do this thing, girls. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I also going back just to the heist thing in general, like in Ocean's 8, I feel like the heist thing needs a break. Like, I think this movie, what I liked about it so much was that, it was a heist movie per se, but there was so much else going on. Whereas with like Ocean's 8, it was just this empty sort of, look how clever we are. Look how many different pieces that we can add to it. We're basically doing the same, like, wink, wink as Ocean's. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? And I am tired of that. I also
barely a heist. Like, thinking about it, and I don't have a problem with that. But I'm like, this is getting billed as a heist movie,
so much more. Exactly. Like, sure, there were certain like we need the blueprints and but it didn't take over the whole film.
It didn't, and it just like it seamlessly worked into all the other elements, and it also was just watching them figure out how to do a heist versus like the experienced professionals like walking through the steps. I don't know. It just
they were trying to not be murdered as well.
Well,
you
like
know?
that she like the Michelle Rodriguez gets the blueprints and she fails. Like she doesn't know how to do it. She can't pull it off. And you're like, cool. Yeah. Like everything doesn't go like smoothly, and there's not like a backup plan on top of a backup plan on top of a backup plan.
And
like,
maybe that is part of why I was so confused by that moment of like her and the guy like kissing. Because like, so does that mean that she's gonna get the blueprints? Like, what is this? Like trying to fit it into that rubric of like it's a heist movie. So like, of course, like this whole sequence is gonna be she will get the blueprints. Like she will get, and it didn't fit together cleanly in that way.
Yeah, I think it was just like give men an ounce of power.
I certainly think that's a huge element.
But
I think
will take a mile.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I loved this movie.
I did too. And so like let's wrap it up. There's like we could go on forever.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Social impact score, scale of 1 to 10.
I'm gonna give this an 8.
Okay.
I think it's the highest one I've given on my guest spots.
You might. It might be. Explain.
So I think just for all the reasons we discussed in terms of putting this really in the context of Chicago and not just having the city be the backdrop, but really trying to sort of work in like the actual issues that are affecting people, especially in terms of politics and gun violence and domestic violence and race and gender. And I just really appreciate how artfully he incorporated all of that gentrification. And so, yeah, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, I was like, am I between a 7 and an 8? Because like it isn't getting the box office yet, but I really do have hope. I think this movie is though going to have a great afterlife too.
It better.
I think streaming, it's funny because a couple of people like, oh, I saw that movie, Miss Sloane. I was like, man, that movie was really
Green
good.
Book.
And like nobody saw it. And so I have hopes because this movie is just too, from a cinema standpoint, this movie's too well made.
And it's so fun
it's just
to
like
see
too
in
well
a theater.
Yeah, it's too well done for it to go completely away in that sense, It's just really well done. Like it's well acted, it's well shot. It's certainly, for a very long movie, well paced. Like, yeah, great performances by an ensemble cast.
Oh, great cast. Like,
I mean, Viola Davis is for sure going to get it, but I would like all of those women deserve supporting nods.
And even what's his name? We've not even mentioned his name. Who played her husband?
Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson was great.
Yeah. So I just I don't watch the Oscars, but the other Oscar award I want them to borrow from the SAG is Best Ensemble Cast. Because, this really... And a largely non-white cast.
Which is the other reason I'm so mad that I want this to do well. It deserves all the praise.
Yes. Recommendation? Do you have a recommendation for the week?
12 Years a Slave.
Okay, so I never saw it.
His last movie.
I'm not sure I can handle that kind of stuff.
It's a hard movie to watch, but it is also just very well done, very intense, just like this one. But with this one fresh in your mind, I feel
this makes me want to see it a lot more.
Yeah.
So we hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. If you did, please take a second to leave us a review and recommend it to your friends. Check out our website, moviesthatmatterpodcast.com. We've got a store with some cool t-shirts. If you want to talk to us, leave a comment on our Facebook page or on Twitter with our tag @MoviesMatterPod. And check Twitter next Thursday to find out what movie we're overanalyzing next. And remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We'll see you next time.